Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah alamin. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad wa ala alihi Muhammad. Hi, my name is Faisal and I'm from class B. And today, me and my friends Tria Dinda, Jamil, Winkil Mercy, Winangsari, and Kusbiantoro Bayu, we're going to present our material entitled Assessing Speaking Skill on how and what we assess the speaking skill. Move to the second slide. We have the definition of speaking skills. So speaking skill is a productive skill that can be directly and empirically observed. Those observations are invariably colored by the accuracy and effectiveness of a test taker's listening skill, which necessarily compromises the reliability and validity of an oral production test. We move to the next slide. We have assessing speaking skill or scoring and speaking skill, how we assess the speaking skill. So we have two types of scoring in speaking skill. First is holistic scoring and second is analytic scoring. For the holistic scoring, it is a method of evaluating a composition based on its overall quality, aka global grading, single impression scoring, and impressionistic grading. Second is analytic scoring. It is a method of evaluating student work that requires assigning a separate score for each dimension of task. Move to the next slide. We have types of speaking. So there are five types tasks in speaking skill. First is imitative speaking. It is based on phonological limitation in consideration of assessment of oral production. Second is intensive task. At intensive level, the test taker are prompted to produce short stretches of discourse, no more than a sentence, through which they demonstrate linguistic ability at specified level of language. Third is responsive task. Assessment of responsive task involve brief interaction with an interlocutor, differing from intensive task in the increase of the creativity given to the test taker now from the interactive task by somewhat limited range of utterance. Fourth is the interactive task. It is include oral production assessment that involve relatively long stretches of interactive discourse, such as interview, role-play, discussion, and games, and tasks of equally long duration but that involve less interaction, such as speeches, telling longer stories, extended explanation, and translation. Five, or the last, is extensive speaking. It is the task that involves complex, relatively lengthy stretches of discourse. And that's all that I have to say. That's pretty much that I have to say. For the further explanation will be explained by Tria Dinda. Time is yours.
So I would like to explain about micro and micro skills. What is micro skills? The micro skills is refer to reducing or producing the smaller chunks of language, such as phonemes, morphemes, word collocation, and phrasal unit. It means that micro skills deals again with the sounds or the creation of sounds, the creation of those letters and word classes, and be able to do stress or create reduced form. Okay, the next is the micro skills. What is the micro skills? The micro skills is the implied speaker focus on the larger elements such as fluent discourse, function, style cohesion, nonverbal communication, and strategic options. It means that language function that can be focusing on you or can focus on style different ways that people say and do certain function in language, such as example is how many different ways can you say hello, how are you, etc. Next, I would like to explain about imitative speaking or imitative performance. What is imitative performance is the ability to simply parrot back a word or phrase or possibility a sentence. The only role of listening here is in the short-term storage of a prompt just long enough to allow the speaker to retain the short stretch of language that must be imitated. There is such a thing as imitative. The first is repetition task and phoneme-pass test. For the repetition task is test taker repeat the stimulus. It means that repeat after me. Uh, the stimulus, whether it is a pair of words, a sentence, or perhaps a question, to test intonation or the production. As you can see in this video, the example of the repetition task is test taker here repeat after me. Beat beat the meaning is pause and bad and fat. Same meaning is the pause meaning. And then the second I bought yesterday, and the glow of the candle is growing, etc. This is an example of the repetition task. The next is the phoneme-pass. The phoneme-pass test skill is explicit computer assisted oral production of over a telephone. Test taker read aloud repeat sentence, say word, and answer the question. Same as the repetition task, as you can see in this video. The example of phoneme-pass test is there is a part A. Test taker read aloud selected sentence from among those printed on the test sheet. Example: traffic is a huge problem in Southern California, and then etc. And then the part B is test taker repeat sentences dictated over the phone. Example: leave town on the next train. And then the part C is the next is part C. The test taker answer question with a single word or a short phrase of 2 or 3 words. Example: would you get water from a bottle or a newspaper? And then part D is test taker here 3 words grouped in random order and must link them in a correctly ordered sentence. Example is was reading or my mother or a magazine. And the part E is test taker have 30 seconds to talk about their opinion about some topic that is dictated over the phone. Example is topic center on family, preference, and choices. The tasks on part E and part B of the phoneme-pass test do not extend beyond the level of oral reading and imitation. For part C and D represent intensive speaking, and section E is used only for experimental data gathering and does not figure into the scoring. The scoring procedure has been validated against human scoring with extraordinarily high readabilities and correlation and in the assessing speaking. I think that's all. Next in the next speaker. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today I'm going to present about the designing of intensive speaking. Okay, in intensive speaking, There are several parts that we have to know in building learning in speaking, especially in intensive. Okay, the first one is directed response task. The second one is the read aloud task. Then sentence dialogue completion task and oral questions. And then the last is translation. In this case, limit stress of discourse. Okay, the first step in intensive speaking, I'm going to describing more that intensive speaking involves producing a limited amount of language in a highly controlled context. An example of this would be to read aloud a passage or give a direct response to a simple question. Then competency at this level is shown through achieving certain grammatical or lexical mastery. This depends on teacher expectation. The first step is direct response task. In this type of task, the test administrators elicit a particular grammatical form or a transformation of a sentence. Such tasks are clearly mechanical and not communicative, but they do require minimal processing of meaning in order to produce the correct grammatical output. For example, test taker here. Tell me he went home. Tell me that you like rock music. Tell me that you aren't interested in tennis, and so on. And then the second step is to read aloud task. Intensive reading, especially intensive reading aloud tasks include reading beyond the sentence level up to a paragraph or two. This technique is easily administered by selecting a passage that incorporates the speech and by recording the test taker's output. The scoring is relatively easy because all of the last taker's oral production is controlled because of the result of the research on the phone-based test. Reading aloud may actually be a surprisingly strong indicator of overall oral production ability. For many decades, foreign language programs have used reading passage to analyze oral production and oral questionnaires. Another technique for targeting intensive aspect of a language requires test takers to read dialogue in which one speaker's line had been omitted. Test takers are first given time to read through the dialogue to get its views and to think about appropriate lines to fill. We can see the dialogue completion task between salesman and customer, and they doing a dialogue based on the context. Okay, and the next is direct response task. For example, what did you do last weekend? This is interview between interviewer and test taker. Okay, and then based on the context. The next part is picture plate task. The more popular ways to elicit oral language performance at both intensive and extensive level is feature quest stimulus that requires a description from the test taker. Feature may be very simple design to elicit a word or a phrase. Somewhat more elaborate and using or composed of a series that tell a story or incident. Okay, there are several examples in picture task. Maybe in elicitation of animal pairs, and then elicitation of comparative, and then future tense is elicit with the following feature, and then let's take her here in picture test. Okay, the next is a picture quote of noun negative response, number, and location. Okay, then a picture quote elicitation of a response and description, and the last is a map quote elicitation of giving direction. Okay, the last part is translation. In this part, assessment of responsive task involves brief interaction with an interlocutor, differing from intensive tasks in the request creatively given to the test taker, and from interactive tasks by the somewhat limited length of utterance. Okay, the little parts in this translation is question and answer. Question and answer task can consist of one or two questions from an interviewer, or they can make up a portion of a whole battery of question and prompt in an oral interview. They can vary from sample question like what is this? Call it in English. To complex question like what are the sleep governments should take, if any, to stem the rate of deforestation in tropical countries. The first question is intensive in its purpose. It is a display question intended to elicit predetermined correct response. We have already looked at some of this type of question in the previous section. Questions at the responsive level tend to be referential question in which the test taker is given more opportunity to produce meaningful language in response. Okay, thank you very much. Back to the first speaker.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Winang Sari from class B with student ID 2113055, and I will explain responsive speaking. Assessment of responsive text involves brief interaction with an interlocutor, differing from intensive tasks in their increased creativity given to the test taker, and from interactive text by the somewhat limited length of utterances. As for the responsive text, namely is the first question and answer. Question and answer text can consist of one or two questions from an interviewer, or they can make up a portion of a whole battery of questions and prompts in an oral interview. They can vary from simple questions like, what is this called in English? To complex questions like, what are the steps governments should take, if any, to stem the rate of deforestation in tropical countries? The first question is intensive in its purpose. It is a display question intended to elicit predetermined. The second is giving instruction and directions. We are all called on in our daily routines to read instructions on how to operate them. Appliance, how to put a box shelf together, or how to create a delicious clam chowder. And the last one is prepricing, another type of assessment text that can be categorized as responsive as the test taker to read or hear a limited number of sentences, perhaps 2 to 5, and produce a paraphrase of the sentence. I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Winkil Miarsi. Okay, today I want to explain interactive speaking. The first is oral interview. An oral interview test administrator and a test taker sit down in a direct face-to-face exchange and process through a protocol of question and directive. Okay, the success of the oral interview will depend on, first, clearly establish the administrative procedure for the assessment or practical. 2. Focusing question and probes on purpose or validity. 3. Precisely elicit the optimal amount and quality of oral production from the test taker, or for best performance. 4. Minimize the potential harmful effect of the strength of the relationship between the interview and the interview, or for best performance. And the last is creating a consistent and workable assessment system, or reliability. 2. Role play. Role playing is a popular pedagogical activity in communicative language teaching class. Free students to be somewhat creative with themselves. In some version, role-playing allows some time for practice so students can map out what they are going to say. It also has an anxiety-lowering effect, even for some people, while taking on some else persona of themselves. 3. Discussion and conversation. Discussion is an integrative as, and so it also advisable to give some cognizance to comprehension. Performance is evaluation learner. Discussion can be a very appropriate task get and observe such ability. First, topic nomination, maintains, and termination. 2. Attention to get, interrupt, and control. 3. Clarification, question, and paraphrase. 4. Understanding signal. 5. Negotiate meaning. 6. Intonation pattern for pragmatic effect. 7. Kinetic, eye contact, proxemic, and body language. And the last, politeness and other sociolinguistic factor. 4. Games. Example of games is Tinkertoy game, crossword puzzle, information gap, and city map. As an assessment, the key is to determine a set of criteria and assessment methods that are quite practical and reliable. And the last, oral proficiency interview or OPL. Specification for the OPL approximates those delineated above under in discussion of oral interview in general. In a series of structured tasks, the OPL carefully designed to elicit pronunciation, fluency, and interactive ability, sociolinguistic and cultural knowledge, grammar, and vocabulary.
Hello, my name is Kusdom Bayu Aji, and I will explain about intensive speaking. Designing assignment task in intensive speaking. Directed response task. In this type of task, the test administrator decides a particular grammatical from a transformation of a sentence. Translation of limited stretches of discourse. Translation is a part of our tradition in language teaching that we tend to discount or disjoin, if only because our current pedagogical stance plays down its importance. Translation methods of teaching are certainly based in area of direct approach to creating communicative classroom. Read aloud text. Reading aloud the text taker spirapate letters, words, and short sentence and reads them aloud one by one in the presence of administrator. Test takers are first given time to read through the dialogue to get it and to think about appropriate lines to fill in. Then ask the test teacher or test administrator producer one part orally. The test taker response. Maybe that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the presentation from my friends. But before I end the presentation, I'd like to show you guys the rubric of holistic scoring and analytic scoring. So here's the picture of the rubric analytic scoring and holistic scoring. And the next slide is holistic scoring. So we have the two slides of holistic scoring. Okay, so that's the rubric, and maybe that's all that I have to say. Thank you for all of you of your participate in our presentation. I'm sorry if there are wrong pronunciation. Thank you very much.